This is the wilderness of West Texas. Raw desert beauty almost untouched by man. 7,000 acres of territory cut by a single road. Morning light reveals the geological riches on the eastern slopes of this desert mountain. A mountain range that rises to more than 7,000 feet and stretches for 15 miles. There are springs in some canyons, providing water for trees and animals. Desert life thrives here if you know when and where to look. In years with sufficient rainfall, Mexican poppies bloom by the millions, creating a golden carpet that covers hundreds of acres and lasts for weeks. So it might be a surprise to learn that these majestic mountains, with their rugged canyons and natural springs, are inside the city limits of El Paso, Texas. This wild country of peaks and canyons is next to Franklin Mountain State Park in West Texas, already the largest urban wilderness park in the United States. As late as the 1970s, the land that is now the Franklin Mountain State Park was privately owned and outside the city limits. That's when a developer cut a road to the top of North Mount Franklin, lowering the highest point by 8 feet. A peak that had been 7,200 feet was now 7,192. The developer bulldozed the top off the mountain, planning to run it for communications towers, but that never happened because the citizens of El Paso got city council to stop it.
But when we hit them with 15,000 signatures on a petition, boy, their ears perked up. They were ready to listen then. And sure enough, they passed the ordinance. They took in the city limits all the way up to this state line there. They'd cover the whole mountain, and the mountain was saved.
That event galvanized the people of El Paso. As a result, the city limits were extended, bringing all of the developer's land within city boundaries. When city council outlawed development there, the developer sued and won. So the city of El Paso traded this mountain range for flat land 20 miles away, land that was ready to develop, and the matter was settled. In 1978, the city deeded the mountains to the state of Texas, and the Franklin Mountain State Park was created. One day, the state park and this adjacent wilderness area might merge, creating an even larger and more beautiful Texas state park. While that has been a goal of El Pasoans for years, there are many obstacles to overcome. This wild country, called Casner Range, is owned by the U.S. Army. For decades, soldiers trained here for combat, shooting large and small weapons into the hills and canyons, and leaving behind the potential danger of unexploded munitions. That's kept the area off limits to people and development, which has preserved the natural beauty of the landscape.
Casner Range had 4 decades of operations. We try to ensure the public safety by letting them know that we have many unexploded ordnance still in this area. So that means if you're hiking in this area, you may run across 75 millimeter shells, 3.5 millimeter rocket shells, unexploded hand grenades. It's dangerous.
Casner Range is bordered to the west and north by the Franklin Mountain State Park. Another part of the northern boundary has housing developments. The eastern boundary is the US 54 Patriot Freeway. and another housing development along Hondo Pass forms the range's southern boundary. In the 1970s, the Army declared Casner to be a closed artillery range. Since then, the public has not been allowed on the property. A few areas were cleared of munitions so that Trans Mountain Road could be built, along with these two museums. Around that time, another 1,200 acres east of Highway 54 were cleared and turned over to the city of El Paso for residential and commercial development. And in 2006, the federal government built a Border Patrol station on this southeast corner of the range. Commercial real estate companies have long been interested in developing parts of the range that run along U.S. Highway 54, where the land is fairly flat and relatively easy to clear. On the west side of the Franklin Mountains, development has already reached the state park's boundary. On the mountain's east side, Casner Range acts as a temporary buffer, protecting that area of the Franklin Mountain State Park from encroaching development. But the future of Casner Range is uncertain. So in 2004, concerned citizens of El Paso formed the Frontera Land Alliance with a goal of adding the remaining 7,000 acres of Casner Range to the Franklin Mountain State Park and to prevent more of the land being lost to piecemeal development. In 2010, Frontera and the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition became partners in the Casner Conservation Conveyance Committee. Working together, they developed a formal plan, the Casner Range Land Use Plan. Once Casner Range is cleared of munitions and permanently protected from development, it can be added to the state park, and the state park's trail systems extended into the range, connecting natural pathways that have been unusable for decades. Several organizations are now actively working to preserve Casner Range and to add it to the Franklin Mountain State Park. The Frontera Land Alliance, the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and the state park itself. In addition, the city, the county, and the state have repeatedly expressed interest and support through resolutions and sponsorships for the preservation of Casner Range. The annual Poppies Fest at Casner Range was created to raise awareness of the range and in hopes of preserving it. Over the years, it's brought out thousands of people for a family-friendly day of fun, with animal exhibits, craft displays, food and refreshments. Now you can help save this magnificent landscape forever. Make a difference today and write to your local, state, and federal representatives. Tell them you want to conserve Casner Range. You'll find their names and addresses at fronteralandalliance.org. This wilderness of West Texas, this raw desert beauty, needs your help. And it is everyone's responsibility to conserve Casner Range.